And welcome everyone to another edition of Orlando Magic Pod Squad. Dante Marchitelli, George Galante, Jake Chapman here with you. Lots to get to. This Orlando Magic team now sitting here at 28-24 at the time of this taping. 3 games left before the All-Star break. You win game 1 of a 4-game homestand, a big homestand coming up. Meaningful games here, the last 3. Big night coming up with Shaquille O'Neal getting his jersey retired. We got a lot to get to. And we'll do it here on this edition of Orlando Magic Pod Squad. The trade deadline has come and gone. What does it look like for the final 31 games of the season for the Orlando Magic as they make their playoff push? Magic sitting in a great position, and we'll recap all of it here for you. But first of all, All-Star plans. All-Star plans for everybody. George, you have an All-Star in Paolo Banchero, but from what I understand, you will not be anywhere near Indianapolis, which is probably a good move. How'd you get out of that one?
I think it just is tenure. Tenure got me out of All-Star Weekend. I really have no other excuse other than that. Listen, I love the festivities.
Yes.
It's a grand event for the league. But I've said it on this format before that for an employee that has to go to All-Star Weekend and God bless Trish Wingerson, she's going to be doing. She's taking one
for the team. Okay, gotcha.
She's going to fall on the grenade for All-Star Weekend. Right. And now it's like, we're so excited that Paolo is in the game, obviously.
Absolutely.
And we'll get to that. But now he's in the skills challenge on All-Star Saturday night. He is in the Rising Stars event on Friday. I thought, he would pull maybe back off the Rising Stars event since he's now going to play in the game. But that means Trisha's got to get up there on Thursday.
Oh, no.
She will be busy Friday
night.
She will be busy Saturday night. She will be busy Sunday night. And then I asked her, I said, well, what time? She said, I got a 5:30 a.m. flight out Monday morning.
Oh, like, I have got to get out of there.
And it's a long
even if he's not in all those events, it's a busy night with him just anyway, right? Going to all the appearances and everything.
He's going to have a media circuit to go through, which is great, and it's going to be great for Paolo.
Absolutely.
He's going to get to do some things he's never done before, and he'll be excited, and everybody will be excited in his camp. It's his first time there. There's nothing like going there for the first time. But I plan on being nowhere near Indianapolis. I plan on being here in Orlando. My kids will still be at school. The lacrosse season, Dante, has started.
Oh, yeah. Okay. It's big.
We'll be doing that.
You're in the busy season. Well, Jake, just so you know, when we go to Indianapolis to play the Pacers, he doesn't stay in Indianapolis anyway. He stays in Chicago and then drives over.
Special exemption.
Special exemption. How about you, move. Jake, you get a chance to decompress a little bit, right? With that, almost 10-month-old?
I do. We're gonna do it. I'm not sure if decompress is the way to describe it. We're gonna go on our first plane flight with little Josie. She is
Oh, that's big news.
Hitting 9 months, and we're gonna go to Philadelphia, see my sister. My parents are gonna drive from Cleveland to Philly, so just a few days. We're gonna fly out on Friday and come back on Monday, and then hopefully get a beach day on Tuesday or Wednesday. Hopefully the weather's good enough because we need one of those.
You may get less rest. You may get less rest than Trish.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
On the flight alone. Just on the flight.
Yeah, exactly. That's George. That's busy. I mean, that is a lot of work. And I'm going to tell you this right now. As soon as you sit down, everyone around you goes, "Oh boy."
Oh yeah. Oh. I am going to have my. When you walk on the plane, I'm not somebody who puts my head down and walks forward. My eyes are darting around. I always make eye contact with people when I get on the plane, just to kind of see what I'm working with. And of course, you always identify the first potential crying baby. And now that's going to be me. It's going to be me and Kelly.
You're the one.
Daughter walking on the plane.
You're the one they're going to identify.
Yep. One of these things as soon as we walk by. Hey, what can you do, right? I figured Philadelphia is it's a good 2 hours and a little change flight. It's not too bad. We're not going to Seattle. And we'll try to time it up. You get a bottle, you get a nap in there, and
absolutely
see how it works.
Listen, kids cry. Kids cry. Everybody understands, right, George? The crying kids. Sometimes you just can't. It's the ones that make no attempt to stop it is where you have the problem, right? It's the parents that say, "Okay, it's fine. Hey, you know what? It's a crying baby. I'm not going to do anything." Do everything you can to get the baby to stop, and if she doesn't, she doesn't. But you got to give it an effort, and I know you will.
That's exactly. we're already taking the proper precautions. We went to the doctor to make sure she didn't have an ear infection. We get her flu
Oh,
booster.
listen,
We're
don't
all
worry.
set to go.
She'll have one when you get back. It'll be
She
fine.
definitely-
It's no problem.
She'll pick one up on the plane.
100%, right?
You will have
Yeah,
a
that's true.
raging ear infection when you get
The
back.
doctor,
Yeah.
and by the way, this is why I love her doctor. She literally said, keep her in bubble wrap before until you get on the
Yeah,
plane.
there you
because
go.
We got a week in the meantime. So, but we're ready. I'm excited for it. Need a
Then
couple
you're not-
days,
We've
definitely.
all done it. You'll be fine.
You'll be totally
Everybody's
fine.
done
Then
it, you'll be
Then you
fine.
wake up and she's sucking on the armrest, and you're like, okay, this is not going to be good. This is not going to be good. But you'll be
They're not
fine. You'll
clean.
be fine.
They're not sterilized.
You'd be surprised. There's not a thorough cleaning process on those planes. Oh, that's great. You'll have a great time. I'm not going anywhere. I feel like we've been around enough. So we're just gonna hunker down and enjoy a couple of days off and be ready to go here for the last 30, 27 at that point, 27 games of the season as they make their playoff push. Probably not a huge surprise, guys. The NBA trade deadline came and went. And not a huge, not any moves, not a single move for the Orlando Magic, but you didn't know that there would be. They've got a full roster. And, I'm sure, as we know with Jeff Weltman, he's making calls, he's fielding calls. And if there was something out there that made sense for this Magic organization, he would have done it. We've seen in the past, he's not afraid to make a move if one is there. But I'm not privy to a ton of insight more than that. But George, I guess we can surmise without a deal being made, that there wasn't something he felt comfortable pulling the trigger on. And of course, it always takes two to tango. So you need someone else to help you as well. And maybe partly there's the feeling that with this roster that we have now, if we're fully healthy with 30 games left, let's see what we can do here with the guys that we currently have on the team.
You basically just took everything I was going to say and already said it. So Jeff is not going to be one to sacrifice something for the future just to try to accomplish something short term. Now, that's not to say that he's not interested in, like everybody else here, making the playoffs and making that push and doing everything we can. I think we have to always kind of take a step back a little bit and look where we are. And right now, like you said, we're 4 games over 500. If somebody would have told you, before training camp, that listen, at the All-Star break, you're going to have the chance to be sick, anywhere from 4 to 7 games over 500 at the All-Star break. There is not one person in Central Florida or anybody that wears Magic blue in the world.
Correct.
That would have said, sign me up for that. Sign me up for that.
And a half a game out of 6th. Let's just add that to the mix too.
It's not, you can't control the other teams, right? Like you can't control what they're doing. You can only control what you're doing. And if you would have said that you can be anywhere from 4 to 7 games or over 500 at the All-Star break, there is not one person that would have said, we should be better than that.
Right.
There's
correct.
not a chance. And so I think the Magic are very happy with where we are. I think that, and that's not to say that Jeff didn't try to improve the roster. He's always looking, and the basketball operations staff is always looking to find ways where they can improve. But it's not going to be at the sacrifice of something where, you're looking 2 years down the road and, oh crap, we shouldn't have done that move. So sometimes, and we've seen it in other places, sometimes the best move is no move. And only time will tell whether that was the right decision to make. I do think that the Magic are now looking at their roster and seeing we have a full healthy roster for the first time all season. Our schedule does lighten up after the All-Star break. And we've already accomplished what we've accomplished in the first 50 plus games with having guys in and out of the lineup, with being very road heavy, 2 West Coast trips, 2 very long East Coast Midwest trips. I think the Magic we cannot be in any better of a situation than we are right now. And if we can get, say, 2 of these final 3 games in this homestand before we go to the All-Star break, I think everybody in Magic Nation should be very happy with where the team stands going into the home stretch.
Well, they have a chance to be 4 or 5 games over 500 going into the break. Very realistic, if not better, going into the All-Star break, which is phenomenal. Then you look at that, Jake, and the other part of that is this team is 7-4 with the starting lineup that we saw last night. Okay, so that's 3 games over 500. That's kind of your difference right there. But it's been 11 games. You've had that group intact in the starting lineup for 11 games. right? So let's see, right? So I guess one way to look at it, just to kind of piggyback on what George said, and again, there's always Magic fans that say, why don't you take the expiring contract of whoever and turn it into Buddy Hield? Or why didn't you trade Admiral Schofield and go get DeJounte Murray? Well, it doesn't work that way, right? But that's what Magic fans do, right? They look and say, okay, well, there must be scenarios where we can add to it. First of all, I don't think anyone should ever expect that there would be a wholesale change, right? If anything, it would have been a minor deal, maybe to add some shooting or things like that. Then you watch them last night, they knocked down they shoot 59% from three, and you think, okay, well, maybe they've got it in them. Maybe there's enough in the tank to get through the final 30 games, but maybe your moves are simply, Jake, you've got a fully healthy roster. That was 11 times you've had that starting lineup last night. Let's see what they can do for the final 31.
Dan, you think about the bench, all of a sudden you've got 10 guys who, we envisioned as your rotation at the beginning of the season, and it's been 12 games or whatever that we've had, from 1 to 10, the guys in the spots that we envisioned for them. I think, I think there was a thought that, we know they're not a great shooting team. Can we add some shooting? But like who in that top 10 is going to slide out? We have shooting there. It's just
who's going to replace the floor who you have
at the same time. We've got 12 road games left, for crying out loud. I mean, talk about how top heavy and front heavy the schedule was. And here we are. So basically everything George said, I agree with. I just don't understand, especially because we were the 4th youngest roster in the NBA on opening night. Like, we have a majority of our roster's best basketball is in front of them. You can make the argument that everybody on our roster, their best basketball is in front of them. You don't want to trade away a guy too early, and then all of a sudden it's 2-3 years from now, and you're going, boy, that would be nice. And to me, it's George, the way George put it, like, you got to kind of stick to the timeline. Paulo's in year 2. Franz is in year 3. When those guys are at the height of their powers is when we want the flexibility to be able to make that one move that we think puts us over the top. And you got to keep all your chips in your corner for that moment. And it might be a big move, bringing in a perfect third complement, or it might be a small move at that point. You trade a couple twos, but Oklahoma City did that, and then they're able to make a move. And whether or not we think Gordon Hayward is the one to put him over the top, Oklahoma City was in every conversation yesterday. Sam Presti could have done almost whatever he wanted to, because he nailed the draft for a few years and because he added all those assets and resisted the urge to make a small move for a few 3 or 4 wins this season. You always have to have, and this is what I love about Jeff Weltman and the front office, you always have to have that sort of long-term vision in mind, because you want to build something sustainable. And, proof positive is the Atlanta Hawks. They mortgaged their future for DeJounte Murray. He's a good player. He wasn't enough to make them a championship contender, not even close. So I think the idea of sort of putting it all in when you're early on in the timeline, and Paolo in year 2, his first All-Star appearance, just doesn't make a ton of sense.
It's very, like, listen, it's very hard because if it was me, I would be like, yeah, let's go get whoever, let's go get whatever All-Star now. Like, the problem is that it's not fantasy basketball, right? We've all played fantasy basketball, and we all feel like we know what we're doing, and we all know, I can trade this, these 2 guys for a superstar. It's good that we have guys in our front office that can look bigger. I am not one of those people. I want to win now. I want to win every day.
Yes, absolutely. Exactly.
That they don't. It's just a. I
want to play Isaac 45 minutes. I'm with you. I know.
it's really in January. I want to do that in January.
Yes, exactly.
There has to be bigger picture thoughts when it comes to how this team is going to go. And Jake hit it right on the head. I think we are setting this up for when, and that's not, again, this is not to say we are not going to go try to get a playoff spot this year. It's not to say we're going to go try to win a playoff series or 2 this year. Of course, we're going to do that, but you do have to have bigger picture in mind. And like you said, I love that when Franz and Paolo hit their superpower time.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen, then that hopefully you have set this up correctly. Oklahoma City's in a different place than we are. As much as we want to try to compare ourselves with them,
they are.
Listen, they're in first place in the West.
Absolutely.
First place in the West. The Magic are not, and so you can't. It's not a parallel road with us in Oklahoma, with somebody like Oklahoma City. Our time will come, and again, we've played 12, 13 games with our full roster out of 52. And now we have it again. And now in a stretch between March and April, we're going to have 10 of 11 home games against teams that are sub 500, which we've done very well at, especially at home. This schedule will let up, and we are poised to have a nice, strong finish to this season. And then maybe we can make some noise in the playoffs.
Well, I'm all for that. And listen, you look at the guys you've got, and I think the thing that frustrates some Magic fans is the second round picks that you get something to fill a need, right? I think that's when you look and say, okay, well, you got this guy for just a pick. You didn't even have to lose a player. But then I think to kind of you guys' point as well, well, who does that person replace in your lineup, right? Because you're kind of rolling along right now. Everybody kind of understands their roles. You look at a guy like Gary Harris, and I think everybody thought maybe with that contract, that would be a desirable thing for other teams. And I'm looking at it. You're 19-12 when Gary plays. You're 19-12 in games when he plays. You're 17-6 when he hits a 1-3. That the difference for this team, if somebody can step up from time to time and make an additional 3, it means all the world to this team, right? They're one of the top third in the NBA in clutch games that they've been in, decided by 5 points or less. You're 1 or 2 made baskets away from having a completely different record, right? And that's just one guy who's playing about 17, 18 minutes.
Listen, I called you yesterday after the deadline, and we just had a chat like we normally do. And I said to you, like, we don't even need, let's just take Gary and Joe, for example, right? I don't even need them to hit a 3.
Correct. Well, that's true too.
I just need them to be on the floor to take a guy 18 inches off the block.
Yep,
I don't need the Magic to shoot 39. It'd be kick ass and amazing if the Magic could shoot 39% from 3, but just the fact that those guys are on the floor and can be on the floor. And I think that goes to the numbers you just said and being healthy, being whole. And so I think we are set up in a great place down the stretch here.
No, I completely agree. So I think that you factor all that in, and those are just a couple of small examples that you look at if you're the front office saying, all right, well, let's roll with what we got, right? We don't know what the future looks like for Markelle. We don't know what the future looks like, for some of these other guys on the roster, but we've got to this point. We're going to have them for the rest of the duration. Let's see what they look like here down the stretch, right?
I'm knocking on every piece of wood around here.
I know, me too. Me too.
That, right? I'm
me
knocking
too.
on everything.
Now that being said, you haven't had a record of health for these guys, so it is hard to bank on that for the final 30 games. But hey, we're in a good position as far as that goes. There might be a couple of back-to-back scenarios where you may not have a guy or two, for a handful of games. But for the most part, this is the roster you have intact. So that, I think we would all agree, right? So that the trade deadline comes and goes. Maybe those were some of the factors that went into it, and this is what we've got for the duration. Not forgetting anything, right? We think we've covered all that.
I think so. It is. The last thing I was going to add is, like, when I was sitting there and going through, okay, who are guys who might be available, who might be a good fit? I was basically naming other teams' version of Gary Harris and Joe Ingles.
Right, you're right.
Right.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
We're going to bring in a veteran who defends well, at the point of attack, doesn't need the ball in his hands, and a good spacer for Paolo and Franz. Oh, wait a second, we have that guy. He's just dealt with injury issues so far this year. So if he is locked in and healthy coming down the stretch, that's the perfect example of when you see it in another jersey, you're going, oh, we need him. We need that guy. Emmanuel Quickley. When everybody was talking about he was available from the Knicks, and I see all this discourse on Twitter, I'm going, we have Emmanuel Quickley. His name's Cole Anthony.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Like everybody, it's always kind of the grass is greener over there. I think we have the roster in place here. And they've proven it so far without health and with the tough schedule, as we mentioned. Here we are, 4 games above 500.
We've had a lot of conversations over the years, all of us, with other teams, broadcasters, PR staff, whatever, where we look at somebody from afar and like, wow, we'd really like to have that guy. And then you have a conversation with that guy and they're like, oh, you can have him.
Yeah, right.
Like,
it's
really?
very interesting.
Like that guy, you can't say. And it's people people would have no idea the caliber of stars, even where you've had a conversation and you're just like, man, he's got to be great. Like I'd love to have him. And they're turning around and being, it's just like you said, the grass is always greener. Somebody else another girl's always prettier. Like that's not necessarily the case. So listen,
right.
let's ride with what we have. Let's let it roll
Well,
out
and,
there.
and if you want to make a move, you can do it this summer. You're 2 months away,
Right.
right? You're 2 months away from the, from the playoffs starting. So you can pursue anything you want. You haven't given up any assets, any draft compensation. And I guess the last part of this, I will piggyback on. Guys can say they don't worry about the trade deadline all they want. Guys can say they don't care. Coach can say, control the things you can control and all that. And that's right. That's how you have to approach it. But there was a different feeling in that locker room yesterday before the game, knowing that, okay, everybody's here. There were a lot more smiles. There was a lot less tense. You went out and had one of your best offensive games of the season. I think guys weren't pressing. I think that's another part of it, right? The final 30 games, and we'll touch on that next. Guys got to play better. There are some guys that you got to shoot better. You got to play better. You got to protect the ball better. And that's what happens. You need that in the playoff push anyway. But don't you feel like, okay, this is what you got to, and it looked to me like it was just the weight was lifted off a lot of guys' shoulders last night.
But Jake, you were at shoot around yesterday. I mean, there were a lot of guys. It's human nature. We were all on our phones. We were all on our phones as guys started to do media availability yesterday, and that's when a couple of the Knicks deals went down.
Mm-hmm.
Or they it's Woj bomb after Shams bomb after Woj bomb.
Yeah, right.
And we're not the only ones that do that. I mean, like Jalen came out to do an interview for me. And the first thing he said was, he's like, whoa, crap. You see the Knicks just got, Bogdan. And it's like, they're all looking at it. But the difference between me and them is they could go at any minute.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
that has to be an unnerving feeling.
Absolutely.
For a young guy like that's on his own, for a guy that has a family, like
no question.
It's a very nervous time for all the players, no matter who you are, because it's been proven over the years that nobody is untradeable, right? Nobody's untradeable. So
and to Jeff's credit, with all that being said, am I going to pull the trigger? Am I going to do something just to do something,
right,
and uproot someone for something that I'm not convinced is going to be that much better than what we've already got?
And you don't know how it's going to affect the other guys in the locker room.
Yes, absolutely.
So maybe
absolutely.
Player A may be really tight with player B, and player B goes, and that messes up player A.
Yes, that's what I was going to say, George. It would never be the reason you wouldn't make a deal, because we want to keep our locker room together. But we have talked all season long about the chemistry and the vibe within that locker room, and it is unique. I think we've been around long enough to know that not all teams are built this way. And chemistry is chemistry. You take away one piece and you have no idea how it impacts, let alone who are we bringing in? Are they going to take shots away from the guys who we need to still be developing? There's just so much more added in. How many years are on their contract? Who represents them? There are so many layers to all of this when you make a move like that. And we are not in the situation where the Detroit Pistons are, where it's like, this clearly isn't working. We need to do stuff. They needed to do stuff for the sake of doing stuff, because very clearly what they were doing was not working. We feel like we're on to something here. And even those small minor moves can sometimes have big impacts.
Now, don't get me wrong. I would have liked to have had Buddy Hield for a second-round pick, but that deal wasn't out there.
Right.
It
takes two to tango.
It takes two to tango. You're exactly right. That was a prominent thought. That was prominent thought on Magic Twitter.
Right.
Yeah, that was
Buddy Hield for like the bottom three guys of our roster. Yeah, sure. That's great.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. The other team has to want that too. So it's not.
I did like the tweet from Bill Simmons. We need to rethink if Detroit should be allowed to make moves. I thought that was brutal, the way they just blew that whole thing up. My goodness. So now the electricity in that building last night was sensational. I think one of the things that stood out to me was Jonathan Isaac rejecting the dunk attempt by Victor Wembanyama. He's caught a couple of people, and at some point people are going to stop trying to attack Jonathan Isaac, right? Jeff says it on the broadcast, think twice, and then they'll shoot and he'll swat it away. Jonathan Isaac, the final 30 games, right? As you sit here now with 30 games left, the minutes will start to creep up. We've seen games where he finishes the entire fourth quarter, right? He's going to be a secret weapon or an X factor for this team if they're going to move up in the standings and ultimately clinch a playoff spot. What does it look like for him as we look at minutes, as we look at where he's going to be potentially at the end of the season? Because he's a difference maker, and that was unbelievable. That's a 7'4" guy trying to throw it down over the top of you, and you sent it into the stands.
It's got to be really hard for Jamal Mosley to keep him. I mean, you've seen it, Dante, where he kind of always peeks over and asks, you or me or Joel Glass, or how many minutes is J.I. at? Because
and what do we say? And what do we tell him?
I tell him 4. Even if it's the fourth quarter and he's played at least 20 minutes, I'm
Is that
like,
4 minutes?
I'm like,
You
he's
got
at 4
16
minutes,
more.
coach. You're all good. He's clear. No, but you still have to listen. The All-Star break is not where we want to get with Jonathan Isaac. March 1st is not where we want to get
That's
with
right.
Jonathan Isaac. We want to get to May with Jonathan Isaac. You're right. I mean, we and a full, healthy Jonathan Isaac. The more he plays, the more he can get through games, with a slight tick up in his minutes, the more mentally healthy he has to be too, to be out there as well. And I think that's a big thing with Jonathan is, he starts off slow. He plays 10 minutes a game and all right, my legs are good. I can get through that. Now we're up to 15. Now we're up to 20. I'm not saying by the time we get to May, he's going to be playing 35 minutes a night. That's not going to happen because this is a guy that's been, suffered through so much. So we can't go ahead and do that to him. But as the season progresses here and he does what he did, I mean, last night was a masterclass, I thought, by Jonathan Isaac. Just and on the offensive end too, he's hitting the glass, he's running the floor. I mean, he runs like a gazelle.
Nice pull-up jumper. Yep.
He had a really good all-around game last night. And you're right. I don't think he's going to surprise anybody. Everybody knows who Jonathan Isaac is. It's a matter of him staying on the floor, and it gives us so much versatility with lineups, the things that Jamal has already, I mean, you've seen it with the end of game lineup that has been thrown out there sometimes where you have Franz basically at the 2, where you have 6'10", 6'10", 6'10", 7 foot. I mean, that's that's a hell of a lineup. It really is. And he can do so many more things. Jamal, when I say knowing that Jonathan is healthy and available.
Remember last year when we were all excited about Bol and Mo Bamba and all the 7-footers? This is the practical application of that. This is the one that works when you go giant down the stretch. I pulled the numbers the other day. J.I. has played 20 or more minutes 5 times this season, and teams are averaging 101.4 points per game against us in those games. It's just a matter of getting him on the floor. And I think what's frustrating, I think the reason that sometimes fans can't figure out why he isn't playing 28, 30 minutes a game is because he's not like a shooter sitting in the corner who can't move anymore, and this is all he's able to do. He is one of the most athletic, amazing freaks in the league when he's out there. He's one of the only guys who you can even consider in the same class with a guy like Wembanyama because he's able to move his feet on the perimeter. He can switch. He can do absolutely everything you want from an NBA defender in 2024. But there is that history. And so, a lot of it is being cautious. If the playoffs were tomorrow, maybe you could get away with 28 minutes, depending on how he feels. But they're not. And so we need to be careful, sort of inching his way in. But we see it. I mean, when Coach Mosley has 12 minutes in his back pocket heading into the fourth quarter of a close game, that's a secret weapon, man. And he is, I mean, he just absolutely wrecks offensive game plans for opponents. It's going to be really big, just keeping them right. And look, if he needs to skip a back-to-back here and there or have a night like Miami where he played 10 minutes, God bless, because come the back end of April, hopefully we're going to need you, big fella.
We're going to need you, big fella. But also, and I'm not saying he's going to shut these guys down, but he's going to make these guys work. In a first-round playoff series, you start sizing up who you could match up with, right? If you end up getting 8th and you play Boston, to have the ability to put 20 minutes of Isaac on Tatum, at least make him work for it, right? You haven't had that, right, for the last couple of years.
I mean, it's
Milwaukee with Giannis, right? You start sizing up
every freaking team in the league.
Absolutely. But a lot of the iron at the top of the conference are exactly who he would guard, right?
Yes.
So I think you start at least to give yourself a chance, right? To at least try to slow down a guy like that as much as humanly possible, if they can be slowed down. So I think he becomes critical, and I think. We saw when Franz Wagner was out, we saw the usage rate climb up for Paolo Banchero. And you wonder, okay, at some point you got to ease off of that guy, right? And we've seen it here the last couple of weeks. I think the All-Star break is going to be good for him. Not that he's going to get a ton of rest, but it's not going to be hard on his legs. He's not going to be out playing competitive basketball games, the Rising Stars Challenge, the skills competition, the All-Star break. I think you don't go hard in those things. And then he's going to have the 4 days off after, one of them being a travel day to get up to Cleveland. So I think that's going to be a break. Whereas conversely, if Franz Wagner hasn't had a break in 3 years, right, since he's come to the NBA with FIBA and all that stuff. So I think those 8 games off that he had with the ankle. He probably needed 3 days off with the ankle, but you decided to give him a little extra rest. And I think that's why the last couple of games we've seen 38, 34 last night against San Antonio. I think that guy's fresh, and I think that's going to help him here going down the stretch.
The thing I love, and you and Q touched on it post game last night after the Spurs game, this team is just built to where, let's take Paolo Banchero, right? He had a streak going last night of 17 games in a row, or 18 games in a row with 20 and 5 assists, 20 points and 5 assists. And he was close to it last night, but he knew Franz had it going. And he doesn't, it's all about, they're so team oriented, and it's correct. And it's great that your top 2 players are team oriented. Like Franz does not care if he scores 12 and Paolo goes for 35. Paolo does not care if Franz is going for 30 and he's only got 14. It's all about who has more points on the scoreboard at the end of the night. And it's just, it's refreshing.
It's refreshing.
Very refreshing. Yes. We've seen it the other way where somebody's got to get theirs. And listen, that's why this team is having success. Again, if you would have told me we would be in this position in August, you'd all have taken it. Everybody would have taken it. And I think it just goes back to how this team is shaping up.
I agree.
Franz is hitting his stride. I mean, we knew Franz wasn't going to shoot 19% from 3 for the whole year, right?
Correct.
Water usually settles, and he's gonna tick that back up to.
I'm not gonna lie, I thought we might as a team, but I'm not gonna lie to you. But you're right. But I knew it wouldn't be him. But we're coming out of that too, which is nice.
And maybe you're right. Maybe that was a little, and that's not to say those guys don't work hard when they're out, because they're working hard to get back on the floor. But everything has looked better for Franz. Not to say he was playing bad before the injury, because he was averaging 20, but the 3 is starting to look better. It's got a little more arc on it. He looks fresher. Like you said, his legs maybe got a little break where we wouldn't have anticipated that in January.
Now, listen, 2 more things. I just want to touch on the last 30 games of the season, kind of what that looks like, and then All-Star Weekend, right, with Paolo and the Magic are well represented, which is going to be pretty cool. But at the time of this, right, the Magic, by the way, are fighting off a Chicago Bulls team that seems to have caught life, right? So Chicago's right behind you, 3 games behind you. Atlanta is catching fire too. Although they've lost 2 in a row, they have the ability to catch fire. So those 2 teams aren't going anywhere. No. You're going to have to fight them off the rest of the way. But you're tied with Miami, right? So you lose the tiebreaker because they win the season series. But you're tied. You're half a game out of 6th with Indiana, who you've beaten twice. You play them 2 more times, but you've already beaten them twice. And now you start looking at things, guys. Listen, anything's possible here in the Eastern Conference. You have to win. It all starts with what you do in this locker room. And I think the big thing is you've got 30 games left. You have 17 games against opponents that are 500 or under, right? So that should be setting up. Finally, you haven't had that. We just came through that 22-game stretch where you're hoping to be above 500 at the end of it, and you are. You're now 4 games over 500. So the schedule should lighten up for you here down the stretch. You're home game heavy. You've got an 8-game homestand. Now you start thinking, and again, you don't want to get too ahead of yourself, but
he says as he smiles, Jake.
You're 3 games behind Philadelphia. Who knows what Philadelphia looks like with the Joel Embiid situation, right? You don't know when or if you're going to get him back, but they're free-falling right now. We assume that New York is going to get these guys and take off, and I think they will. I think they will, because Jalen Brunson is just on a mission right now. But what if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't work with New York? And then the last part of it is anyone convinced that Milwaukee is going to take off? Right? They're 1-5 since they've hired Doc Rivers. I don't think it was all Adrian Griffin's fault. I'm not saying this is Doc's fault, but clearly there's something that just isn't quite working with Milwaukee. You're 1-1 against the Bucks, and you play them 2 more times at the end of the season. Now that terrifies me. I think Milwaukee's going to figure it out and ultimately get second in the Eastern Conference. But we don't know. We don't know. You could go potentially as high as 4th, maybe even 3rd in the Eastern Conference if you get red hot.
So the overarching theme of this edition of Pod Squad is we're going to be the second best team in the East.
We're going to win the East.
We're going to, that's we just went from trying to battle for 6, 7, and to like Dante's like, Hey, you know what? Screw it. We're winning the East. Everything's
Well, I
good.
sit down with Josh. I sit down with Josh Cohen, and he goes, I kind of ran some of the numbers, and I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means, but I know,
Especially when Josh is saying it. You don't
especially
have
when
any
Josh does it
idea.
from
Don't know where it's going.
OrlandoMagic.com. But I know 97% of his life is crunching the numbers, so I don't
That's
doubt what he
true.
says.
That's true.
And he said there is a path, if everything plays out how it should, and this team beats this team, and this that the Magic could get fourth in the Eastern Conference. Right?
He's like,
crunched the numbers.
If we go 29-1 over the last 30 games, I think
He's
we got
crunched
a
the numbers.
shot.
But I don't doubt that he's got the lights off in his room, and he's got a black light, and he's writing on the walls, and he's crunching the numbers. He's got it all figured out.
Why is he doing it in black?
I don't know why he's doing it. It's just how I imagine he crunches numbers.
Jake, talk to him about that. He can't be doing that in black light.
While he's developing the film in the back, he's got
it works better. He's got the guy's a multimedia maven for crying out loud.
Yes,
he's got.
There's a method to the madness, believe me. But anyway, I look at it and I say, there's we don't know what the East is going to look like. So I think at the bare minimum, this Magic team should be fighting like heck to avoid play-in. I think there's a real possibility you could grab 6, maybe even go as high as 4 or 5 in the East.
Yeah, when you look at who's playing well right now, you mentioned Chicago. It seems like they found something. I'm not particularly worried about them. They also lost Zach LaVine for the rest of the year. But it's going to be a big game.
It seems to have helped them, is what I was just going to say. Yeah.
Well, but I think long term that's fine. And by the way, Kobe White, I think we should probably be talking about the year that guy's having. He's been lights out, and Vooch is playing really well as of late. And they did. I think the fact that they sat on their hands at the deadline probably tells you that they feel okay about themselves. Either that, or they think that's the best chance to not get everybody fired, which is probably more likely the case.
Self-preservation.
You got to get to that point this time of year. Boston is Boston. The Cavaliers have been insane. You're right about Milwaukee. Like, there was something wrong there, and I don't care if you bring in Greg Popovich. You can't fix it like that immediately.
Right,
no coach has that much power. So we'll see. I mean, Milwaukee's got more talent than just about anybody, but there's clearly like some issues there, and it's mostly on the defensive end. I'm scared of New York, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I think
no
the
question.
moves they made yesterday,
absolutely,
they're red hot. But beyond that, so I just did Boston, Cleveland, and New York. I think are playing the best in the conference, and I think catching any of those three. Aside from that, I could see a free fall for any of these teams. Indiana doesn't scare me at all. And the Sixers is going to be really interesting to see. Can Tyrese Maxey slide into that role and carry a team for 30 games and kind of tread water until potentially Embiid plays again? I have a feeling we won't see him again this year. It just doesn't.
With the way the
door open, but
with how cautious they are with him, for sure, I could certainly see that.
Worth it? Yeah, I don't think so. So you're right. Like, and that's where we are right now. And I think that's one of the reasons you don't make a move and mess with it, because you do look ahead and say, look, if we just kind of keep doing what we're doing right now,
that's right.
Even if we tread water the rest of the way and we're sitting there 4 games above 500 at the end of the season or heading into April, that could be good enough to be out of the play-in, depending on what teams like Philadelphia and Indiana end up doing. So I think you're in a good spot, and it certainly helps that we have so many darn home games coming up. That 8-game homestand in March is a godsend. I mean, it should be anyways.
Now listen,
that could put you in a good spot.
I'm well aware we wouldn't be saying any of these things if we lost to San Antonio last night. So this thing comes and goes game by game, right? But right now it's set. You're winning the games you're supposed to win. That's all you can do.
Especially the 3 of us. Can you imagine if we lost that game last night and then we jump on here today?
There would be no podcast. There would be no.
I'd have told you guys to go pound sand. We're not doing a podcast tonight. There's no chance we're doing a podcast.
Right. But they do what they're supposed to do. They've struggled at times, but they've beat some of the best teams. But they're beating the teams they're supposed to beat, and that's all you can ask for here down the stretch. Real quick before we get out of here, the Magic are going to be well represented next week, and next week on Pod Squad, Jake Chapman and I are going to catch up with Pete D'Alessandro in the front office for the Orlando Magic. So that's going to be fun. And salary cap, we'll kind of get into some numbers. And
you should have Josh Cohen on with the blacklight with Pete on that episode.
That's a good point.
I want to compare. I want to see how he crunches numbers as opposed to Josh Cohen.
Can I just say real fast, a pregame media meal with Josh Cohen?
It's a delight.
That's perfect. That is the perfect way to get ready for a broadcast, because I come out of there smarter no matter what. That dude is nonstop info.
I need one of you two to ask. That should be Pete. Your first question to Pete is, does he crunch the numbers for the cap with a black light?
Yes,
If you
fair
can
enough.
do that, I think that would set the tone for the podcast next week with Pete.
I think like the number, like the movie 23, and everybody's just writing on the walls and it's just obsessed with numbers. But that's probably not how it is. That's probably not how it is for all, not for all analytics people. The Magic are going to be well represented during All-Star Weekend. This is going to be cool, guys. With Paolo Banchero obviously in the big game, the Rising Stars Challenge. You're going to have Mac McClung with the Osceola Magic. I think that I'd love to see that guy get a chance with the Orlando Magic at some point. The problem is it would come at someone's expense, and that's hard to look and say who you want to get rid of because. But you want the guy to get an opportunity. He's
Dante,
tearing
who
up
do you
the
want
G
to get
League.
rid of? Say it. Who do you want to get rid of?
Oh boy, don't do that.
No, you can't. No,
Don't
that's the
do
thing.
that.
Everybody,
Jeez.
I'm joking.
you've got 2 or 3 guys that I think can really help you, but can't even get on the floor.
Yeah.
Because you've got guys in front of you that are just offer more right now.
Well, the
So
Green Goblins
I think you've got
started to combine
that's-
like 70 games or something.
That's the
this
thing.
year.
That's the thing. You've got guys waiting in the wings that are very good NBA players that just can't get on the floor right now. So if you added Mac McClung, it's not like you could add him onto the floor. I hope an NBA team gives him a chance because I think he's an NBA player. But he's going to be representing the Osceola Magic in the slam dunk contest. And we know how electrifying he was last year. Jaylen Brown will be a part of the dunk contest. This is going to be cool, guys, to see the Magic heavily represented. You're going to get some national attention with Shaquille O'Neal having his jersey retired in your building. That'll be the first jersey to go up into the Magic rafters. Kind of some fun national attention coming Orlando's way finally here coming up next week.
I mean,
Paolo
it's over.
Banchero playing his first nationally televised game,
Yes.
and he's already been named an All-Star. That's right? Like that's. I mean,
Yeah.
Trust me, I've had lots of I had somebody call me from the NBA the other day and say something about Paolo at All-Star and doing some media stuff or whatever for ESPN or TNT, and I was just like, well, why am I in a hurry to? Like,
attaboy.
and I was kidding. I was half
right.
kidding. I had my tongue in cheek, but they know that every time they bring up national TV or something to do with the national affiliates, that they're before I agree and say yes, which we do, I'm always going to kind of give them a little jab first.
Yeah.
Hey, we haven't been on national TV very much in the last 12 plus years.
Yes.
I go, we have the number 1 pick. He was almost a unanimous rookie of the year. And you still only gave us one. But I digress. Now, see, you're getting me all riled up.
Yeah.
But the counter to that is we have not been 4 games over 500 on February 9th since 2012.
In a long time.
Since 2012. It is hard to look.
Right?
It's hard to look and say, boy, we got to have that team on national TV. But we have certainly been more deserving than no games.
I would like to hope that as teams, we see it all the time. Games get flexed out as the year goes on.
Right.
There's a long stretch here where I do think there's a good possibility of us getting games picked up here along the way if we can keep doing what we're doing and heading into the playoffs. I mean, we're going to be hard to ignore. Paolo's going to be at All-Star Weekend. The guy is so deserving. I mean, everybody's seen the night where he got, where he finally got the nod and the reserves were announced. Just that feeling for him and the team and everybody involved. Very excited for Paolo, very excited for the Magic. Listen, this is what we've been wanting, right? This is what we've been craving for years. And this is the light at the tunnel. This is what we've been hoping for. And you can see it now from a distance. And it's a very, very exciting time.
And I get Magic fans pushing for, Dante, why aren't you pushing for nationally televised games? I don't work nationally televised games. We don't broadcast those. So when it's on TNT, we have the night off, which is cool once in a while. It'll be awesome on Tuesday for the Shaq thing, but you're never going to hear me push. I like when the games are on Bally Sports Florida, when we can go up against ESPN. But for those that don't know, we are not. It's an exclusivity. TNT has the rights, and it's not like we broadcast simultaneously. But I love the exposure. We got to get the exposure when we're in the conversation now.
It's coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And there'll be more and more games, and I don't think we can hide from it next year for sure. And we've earned it, right? We've earned it, and we'll be, and Jake will be with Josie on JetBlue, looking on the plane, right? Watching the highlights coming back. It'll be a lot of fun here next week. All right, guys. Well, good stuff. We got 30 games to go, and good luck to us. It'll be a lot of fun here the last 2 months. We've not had Probably been about 10, 12 years since we've had the kind of this excitement going into the final 2 months of a season. Let's enjoy it, and let's avoid the play-in. Let's grab a playoff spot here in the next 2 months.
I'll do my best, Dante.
All right, do your best. Do your best. That'll do it for this edition of Magic Pod Squad. We'll see you next time with Pete D'Alessandro. We'll join Jake and I next week. You don't want to miss that on Magic Pod Squad.